हैदराबाद को मेरी तरफ से शत शत प्रणाम। Before me, some speakers, and then I met some young people here. Somebody is learning martial arts, somebody is doing a startup, somebody is doing design strategy, and the speakers before me, I just found something that is binding all of us together is the Rajasic force that our nation is going through right now. In my day job, I get foreign dignitaries. Some of them are ministers, some of them are foreign ministers, defense. Some of them are academics and some from think tanks, some students, media. And they are trying to figure out exactly what's going on with our country right now. In the process of answering those questions, I had to also figure out what is happening in our country. Yes, you can see several activities everywhere around us, in economics, in entertainment, in science, technology, in startups, money. But underlying all of that is there is a force that is coming out of our country. It's called the Rajasic force, which is what I will be talking about. Before I begin, I would like to situate this force so that you can imagine the kind of treasure that India has, ancient India, Bharat has been, and still exists today, from which we can pick up and enlighten our lives. These I call the spiritual sciences of India. There is the science of the soul, there is a science of life, there is a science of bhakti, faith, there is a science of paths. Within the paths, the darshanas, as everybody would be knowing, are 6 astic darshanas, of which Sankhya is one. Within Sankhya, there are 2 main directions, one given by the Purusha, the other by Prakriti. And Prakriti expresses the Purusha through 3 modes, which is Sattva, Tamas, and Rajas. Tamas, as we all know, is inertia, indolence, laziness, weakness. A tamasic person just barely manages to survive. He just wants to go on with life with as little disturbances as possible. A Rajasic person engages with life with full of enthusiasm, with dynamism. He kills, he conquers, he builds huge things. But essentially it's egoistic. And Sattva is poise, knowledge, and balance, which keeps the Sattva, the Rajasic and the Tamasic tendencies in balance. A Sattvic person, for instance, in the middle of battle, would seek harmony, peace, the right path, as Sri Ram did in one of the previous presentations. The gunas, these are the 3 gunas. The body of the work is there in Isha Upanishad, Bhagavad Gita, Shiva Purana. And the Puranas themselves are divided into 3, of 6 are Sattvic, 6 Rajasic, and 6 Tamasic. I'm talking about the 18 Mahapuranas. All of us, every individual, has in himself or herself an admixture of the 3 gunas. The dominance of one over the other defines who you are. Are you a Rajasic person? Are you a Tamasic person? Are you a Sattvic person? I also feel that these tattvas, these forces inside us, they keep changing. They're dynamic because we ourselves are evolving. As we evolve, our natures change, these characteristics change. We recoil, we embrace, we rise, we fall. For instance, Arjun is, as we all know, a Rajasic warrior, but when he faces his grandfather, his cousins, as the humongous army of the Kauravas before him, he recoils from battle. The tamas inside him rises and begins to smother the Rajasic tendencies. As we all know, Sri Krishna brought him back and put him, he suddenly thought that it's better to be renunciate than to kill your own people. Sri Krishna says the renunciation has to be within and not just an outer renunciation. There are 3 platforms on which the gunas work. According to Rishi Kapila, who put the Sankhya philosophy together, and Vedvyas in the Mahabharata, it applies to individuals, as I explained. Vedvyas in Shiva Purana says the entire divinities are part of the gunas. For instance, Brahma, the creator, is Rajas, so is Saraswati. Vishnu, the preserver, is Sattva, so is Sati. And Rudra, the destroyer, is Tamas, just like Lakshmi. Shiva is beyond the gunas, just as in the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna is beyond the gunas. Sri Aurobindo applies the theory of gunas to nations. According to him, the dominant trait of a nation, which is what I've been talking about, which is what you see in this room, this energy, this flow of creativity, this building that's happening all around us, the political change, the global footprints, all that is part of a national guna, which today we are seeing to be Rajasic. The spiritual expression of collectives from the individual, but before the divinities, those collectives, when people of various hues form themselves into a singular consciousness, what is that dominant force? Today it's Rajasic. In ancient India, it was Rajasic. It was the time of knowledge, ideas, temples, institutions, libraries, wealth, trade. In medieval India, I think as a consciousness, we fell into tamas. This not only enabled invaders to come. In fact, I get a feeling that we almost invited invaders into India. We lost our power, our wealth, confidence. We lost our faith. We lost our religion. Essentially, we lost this Rajasic force. Sri Aurobindo says that the history of nations, when you examine them through these three characteristics, is a circular motion between Rajas and Tamas. The Sattvic ideal has been expressed in some individuals, but not as a collective so far. So the basic journey of all nations, when you see the rise and fall of nations, which I will come to shortly, is a journey from Rajas to Sattva and back. Despite being conquered, despite being invaded, the flame of Rajasic energy continued to burn somewhere in our country, in some of us. Now it is rising again. It probably began with the freedom movement. It attained political freedom, but we remained economically and culturally captured. Now we see an economic unshackling happening. This began in 1991. Cultural freedom will follow, and I think it's also going to power the rest of the other freedoms. Since 2000 onwards, this is my opinion, I see this Rajasic force attaining critical mass. We see it in geopolitical governance. We see it in economy, in finance. We see it in literature, films. We see it in cultural pushbacks in terms of getting the stolen ideals back. All these require Rajasic energies, which are now, you can see them form around you. All constituents, all major constituents, the dominant trait today, what I see, what I observe, is a Rajasic trait. The urge to do something, and I sense it in this room very strongly. One of the expressions of the Rajasic force that we keep talking about in terms of a number is India as a $10 trillion economy. What does 10 trillion even mean? Every $1 trillion that India rises, we see an increase in $700 in per capita income. That's approximately 56,000 rupees of per capita income. That's approximately a little more than 2 lakh rupees for a household. What does this 2 lakh rupees increase in the household income, per capita income, mean? It changes a lot of things. In international Rajas, we see a new assertiveness that is coming up over a meekness that used to exist. We have today the ability to influence global events, and we are doing it very smartly, without getting too aggressive. For instance, the manner in which the Russia-Ukraine war and India taking oil from Russia has been countered. We see it in the manner in which India is trying to help poorer nations, in G20, for instance. There is a policy Rajas happening where there is an ease of life which is unshackling individual citizen Rajas. There is a catalyzing of the economy that is powering the business Rajas. Only yesterday, two days ago, the Jan Vishwas bill was passed where 113 compliances for which you could be imprisoned while doing business have been decriminalized. And there will be more such. There is a rise of a domestic knowledge systems, a cultural Rajas, which is what this this conversation is all about. All our outer expressions are being driven by an inner rajas. I'm going to take two small points before I get to the larger parts, which is that what are these? Is it being driven by India's youth? India has among the lowest dependency ratios. Japan is 71, France 64, India is 47. Not only that, India is 47 and it is falling. If you see United States, the dependency ratio is 54 and it is rising. In China, it is 45, less than India, but it is rising. In EU, it is 57 and rising. In Japan, it's 71 and rising. In India, it's 47 and falling. The only competitor that I see is Indonesia and Thailand. Thailand doesn't have the scale, but Indonesia is 47 and falling. India is 47 and falling. Indonesia is a $1.3 trillion economy. India is 3.3. Let's see where this goes. Could it be that the Rajasic energies are happening because of the manner in which our changing food preferences? Let's examine this. Extreme poverty has almost been eradicated. It was 0.8 according to IMF. It is 5.7 according to ADB. It is 8.9 according to World Bank. And in 1987, it was 50%. Half our population was under extreme poverty. Today, even if we take the biggest number, it's less than 10% is in extreme poverty. In the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to be zero poverty. This is impacting our food choices. It is impacting our gunas. Let's see how. The cereal consumption of individuals between 1996 and between 1994 and 2012 has fallen. That's the latest data. The new data will happen, it's happening, going to begin now, and maybe in the next 2 or 3 years we will have that data, and I'm sure this trend will continue. In those years, we have seen that cereal consumption is down, vegetables are up. These are sattvic foods. Vegetables are up 60%. Eggs are up 202%. This is Rajasic food. Chicken is up 1000%. We are eating more Rajasic food than we have ever done before. The masalas, the spices consumption has increased by 1000% as well. Is Earth powering Rajas? Probably. I've just taken two, but now you look around you, be it in the area of ideas, aspirations, entertainment, spirituality, dharma, temples, wealth, schools, sports, anywhere you look, you examine it through the lens of these gunas, and you will see what I'm talking about. We are becoming a Rajasic nation. Is the Rajasic force permanent? No. Sri Aurobindo has already said that, and let's see what happened. What began until 1000 AD was that India was the Rajasic nation of the world. There was huge wealth, there was power, there was force. India was going out. We began to lose it. This Rajasic force moved to Europe. From Europe, it went to Japan and the US. Japan is at 71, I told you, 71 dependency ratio. It's full of old people. United States has a capacity to bring young people, but from United States, it is now moving to China, which to me is an Asuric nation, and it is now coming back to India. In Europe, between the 1500 and 1950s, there was Renaissance, colonial conquest, you had the musicians, you had the painters, you had the Industrial Revolution. Today, that Rajasic force is ebbing. It's before our eyes. There is low growth. There is low fertility. There are strategic blunders. Europe is moving towards irrelevance and still not being able to decide what it wants to do, how it wants to move forward. The people who invaded India during the the Turkic invasions are the people who are going to Europe as immigrants today. It is attracting the worst form of immigrants. I'm not saying this. There are Islamic scholars who are saying this, that there is no problem in so many of our Islamic nations. The persons who are running away are those who we don't want. They are going to Europe. Tamas is settling in. Will the new Europe be a tamas-driven Rajas? Will it turn Asuric? We don't know. At the moment, it seems to be in that direction. Japan between 1850 and 1950 began as a military power. It colonized China, Taiwan, Korea. Sri Aurobindo says it was the time of their Rajas, rise due to the samurai culture. That Rajasic force is now ebbing. There is aging, there is low growth, there is low fertility. Tamas has set in. It is in a state of a wealthy but stable tamas. The US from 1900 till date was a geography where immense innovations happened. They sent a man to the moon. It was a place where wealth was created. It became the most powerful nation in the world. It created institutions, it created public goods, it created global public goods. It created the United Nations, World Bank, IMF. The Rajasic force today seems to be ebbing in society, possibly in domestic politics as well. But in the areas of technology, in the areas of business, military, markets, America stands at the top. Also, the US has this propensity to be able to absorb, to be able to import the Rajasic forces, the best of Rajasic forces from across the world during this century. Will it continue to do so? Apparently so. It does look to be like that. But it is internally dealing with very strange problems, for instance, gender. The Gunas are in a transition conversation in the United States. In China from 1990, till date, actually it began in 1980s, but the force got economic momentum during the 1990s, around the time that India also began with the 1991 reforms, is been functioning under a tamasic Rajasic force. It has tensions on all its borders other than North Korea and Pakistan. There is wolf diplomacy, there is debt trap engagements, there is beggar thy partner strategy. It has weaponized everything from trade, diplomacy, currency, education, markets, companies, and even individuals. There are 5 laws that have turned every organization, entity, including individuals, into a potential spy. At some point, this Rajas, the domestic Rajas of the nation, will fight the authoritarian Rajas, that is the Chinese Communist Party. In fact, China is actually a Chinese Communist Party to which is appended a nation called China. Momentum will keep it going, but it is inviting its own decline. This is a tamas-driven, Rajasic and Asuric nation. India, from 2000s till date, the memory of our Rajasic force, that we were once powerful, that we were once wealthy, that we were once the temples of education, literature, arts, architecture, has been forgotten. That memory is being revived now. It was lost because of the education, because of policies. It is like you have the white man's burden, you have the Bharatiya's burden. The GDP in 1000 was 28% of world GDP. Today it is 3.5. Sri Aurobindo says India needs its Kshatriya Dharma back. Our Kshatriyas need to come back. Kshatriyas are Rajasic in their nature. It is now returning. It is reaching a critical mass. It is likely to be a force for good. It is not going to be a tamasic-driven Rajasic nation. It is, in my opinion, going to be a sattva-driven Rajasic nation. We are already creating the public goods. We have already created the public goods which power my argument, which is, look at our vaccine diplomacy. Look at the manner in which the Western countries were trying to scratch the whole world to their benefit. Look at the way India created its own vaccine and gave it to other countries for free. Look at our UPI. Look at the manner in which we engage with peace, but this time from a position of strength. Not because we are weak. We want peace because we are strong. We want peace because we can ensure that we can demand peace and we can get that peace. The national Rajas, as I talked about, comprises the individual Rajas. Each individual needs to awaken it, contribute to our national Rajas. Tamas will continue to pull us down. We have enough enemies within and outside. Not only that, we have our enemies within us. We have the fear of narratives. We have the fear of battle. We have the fear of loss. All these need to go away. It's going away. If we do nothing, Prakriti will still continue to do her work. We will continue to go. If we become conscious, we will enable Prakriti to go faster. I come back to this slide that I had begun with in my earlier part. This is what Sri Aurobindo says about it. This slide defines Sanatan Dharma. This is what Sri Aurobindo had to say about it. When the Sanatan Dharma declines, then the nation declines. And if the Sanatan Dharma was capable of perishing, with the Sanatan Dharma, it would perish. The Sanatan Dharma, that is nationalism. India as a Rajasic nation, the future is a future that is already happening. It is inevitable. It is preordained. And it is happening now. Thank you.